You remember Sophie Pecora as the 15-year-old girl who walked on to the America's Got Talent stage with a guitar and an original song. But here's what most people missed. Sophie never really disappeared. She simply stopped being part of the television story. After receiving Brad Paisley's Golden Buzzer in 2019, Sophie became one of the young performers audiences were watching closely. But her AGT journey ended in the quarterfinals, and once the cameras moved on, so did the attention. What followed was much quieter. Sophie continued writing, recording, and releasing her own music while growing far beyond the image of the teenager audiences remembered. And now, in 2026, something makes that old AGT story worth revisiting. Sophie has released new music again, including The Quiet Kid and Poker Face, with Poker Face listed by Apple Music as her latest release on July 24, 2026. So what really happened to Sophie Pecora? The answer isn't a scandal, a dramatic disappearance, or a secret Hollywood story. It's actually more interesting. She grew up, changed as an artist, and kept going after the spotlight moved somewhere else. The Golden Buzzer was supposed to be the beginning of something huge. Sophie was only 15 when she appeared on America's Got Talent and performed Misfits, an original song about feeling like an outsider and dealing with bullying. The performance immediately separated her from contestants who depended on familiar covers.
Sophie was presenting her own writing, her own voice, and her own perspective. During the judge cuts, guest judge Brad Paisley was impressed enough to press the golden buzzer, sending her directly into the live shows. For a teenager, it was an enormous moment. Suddenly, millions of viewers knew her name. The image was almost perfect for television. A young singer, a guitar, an original song, and a famous country star deciding that she deserved a direct path to the live rounds. But golden buzzers create expectations. When a contestant receives one, viewers naturally imagine that the story will keep getting bigger. They expect the contestant to make the finale, become a household name, and perhaps launch a huge career afterward. Sophie's story didn't follow that predictable path, and that difference would become one of the most important parts of her career. The part most viewers probably remember least is how quickly the AGT journey actually ended. Sophie reached the quarterfinals and performed her original song, Happy in LA. The judges responded with standing ovations, which made the result even more surprising. But once the public vote determined who would continue, the golden buzzer could no longer carry her forward. Sophie ended up among the contestants competing for the Duncan Safe, and she ultimately failed to advance. Her AGT journey was over in the quarterfinal stage. That created a strange situation.
One of the biggest moments of Sophie's career had been receiving Brad Paisley's Golden Buzzer. But the competition itself didn't turn into the long television run people might have expected. There was no finale, no winner's trophy, no months of additional AGT exposure. The show continued without her, and the audience's attention moved toward the remaining contestants. For a young performer, that could have been the point where everything simply stopped. Instead, Sophie had to figure out what came next without the platform that had introduced her to millions of people. And that's where her real post-AGT story begins. The biggest misconception about Sophie is that the end of AGT meant the end of her music. It didn't. Sophie continued writing and releasing original material after the show. Her official biography describes her as a singer-songwriter, rapper, and poet, and highlights projects including Raise the Bar and Wildflower. Her songwriting also received recognition outside television. Her official biography says 7th grade won first place in the teen category of the International Songwriting Competition, while Anxiety won the grand prize in the unsigned-only music competition. That changes the way we should look at the AGT story. Sophie wasn't a performer who suddenly discovered music because a television show gave her an opportunity. She was already writing songs before the Golden Buzzer. AGT simply gave her a much larger audience for a short period.
Once that audience moved on, the songwriting remained, and that is an important distinction. Television fame can disappear almost overnight, but an artist's catalog can keep growing for years. Sophie chose to keep building that catalog. She wasn't waiting for another judge to press a buzzer. She was developing the one thing she could completely control, her own music. Then, something more subtle started happening. Sophie was growing out of the image AGT had created for her. The teenager audiences met in 2019 was naturally going to change with time. Her catalog shows that evolution. Apple Music lists releases including Extrovert from 2023, followed by The Youth, Crime Scene, and Vampire in 2024. These weren't simply attempts to recreate the AGT moment. They expanded the range of her music and gave Sophie more room to explore different ideas and emotions. Her official website continues to feature songs such as I'm Fine, Pretty People, Keeping Everything Inside, Anxiety, Wildflower, and Overthinking. That catalog is important because it shows how easy it is to confuse visibility with activity. If you only watched America's Got Talent, you might think Sophie's story stopped in 2019. But if you follow the music, a different picture appears. She kept releasing songs. She kept experimenting. She kept developing. The public image remained frozen around a 15-year-old girl with a guitar, while the real person continued getting older.
And that gap between the image people remember and the artist she became is one of the most interesting parts of her story. And 2025 gives us another reason not to call Sophie a forgotten contestant. Apple Music lists Aliens and Brainless among her 2025 releases, showing that the music continued even when Sophie wasn't receiving the same television attention she had during AGT. This is where the economics of attention become important. America's Got Talent can put an unknown performer in front of millions of people in a single night. Independent music doesn't work that way. A song can be released without a television audience waiting for it. There may be no dramatic judge reaction, no golden buzzer, and no huge primetime moment. The artist has to build attention one release at a time. That's much easier for casual viewers to miss. Someone can remember Sophie from AGT and honestly believe she disappeared because they stopped seeing her. But her music catalog tells a different story. She continued working, she continued releasing, and she continued developing an audience outside the reality show machine. So the real question isn't why Sophie disappeared. It's why the mainstream audience stopped noticing someone who was still creating. And that becomes even more interesting when we reach 2026. Then came 2026, and Sophie gave people something new to talk about. On February 13, 2026, Sophie released The Quiet Kid. The title immediately creates an interesting contrast with the image people still have of her. On AGT, Sophie was the quiet teenager who stood on a giant stage with a guitar and expressed herself through original songwriting. Years later, she was releasing a song carrying a title that sounds connected to that identity. But there is an important line we should not cross. There is no verified evidence that The Quiet Kid was specifically written about her America's Got Talent experience. So we shouldn't manufacture a hidden meaning that Sophie herself hasn't confirmed. What we can say is that the contrast is striking. The teenager audiences remember is permanently preserved in old television footage. The real Sophie kept growing. Her music kept changing. Her catalog kept expanding. And she was still creating nearly 7 years after her golden buzzer moment. Then, just a few months later, another release arrived, and this one became the clearest evidence yet that Sophie's story was still moving. On July 24, 2026, Sophie Pecora released Poker Face, and that is the detail that changes the entire 2026 update. Apple Music currently lists Poker Face as her latest release, while Spotify also records the single as a July 24, 2026 release. This isn't a massive television comeback, and we shouldn't pretend it is. There is no evidence that Sophie suddenly became a global superstar, but that isn't what makes the release important. It proves that Sophie is still actively creating music years after America's Got Talent. Her latest work isn't simply nostalgia. It is new material from an artist who has had years to develop beyond the teenager audiences first discovered. The Golden Buzzer introduced Sophie to millions of people,
but it didn't define everything she would become. Poker Face is another piece of evidence that her career continued after the show, even when mainstream attention became much quieter. And that may actually be the most surprising part of this entire story. Sophie didn't need another Golden Buzzer. She didn't need another reality show audition. She simply kept releasing music. So what really happened to Sophie Pecora? She didn't vanish. She didn't suddenly become a massive mainstream celebrity either. The reality sits somewhere in between. Sophie received Brad Paisley's Golden Buzzer in 2019, reached the quarterfinals, and then left America's Got Talent. After that, she continued building her identity as a songwriter and independent artist. She released projects and singles, expanded her catalog, and gradually moved further away from the image of the 15-year-old performer who first introduced herself to America. In 2024, her catalog included The Use, Crime Scene, and Vampire. In 2025 came Aliens and Brainless. Then 2026 brought The Quiet Kid and Poker Face. Maybe the real surprise is that there was never supposed to be a dramatic ending.
We simply stopped seeing Sophie on television, and many people assumed that meant she stopped moving forward. But those are two completely different things. America's Got Talent gave Sophie a huge moment, but it could never show everything that happened afterward. The cameras captured one teenage performer at one specific point in her life. They didn't capture the years of songwriting that followed. They didn't capture every release. They didn't capture the person she became. And they certainly didn't capture the music she's still making in 2026. Sophie Pecora isn't the same girl we remember from AGT. She's older. She's more experienced. Her music has evolved. And she's still writing. The Golden Buzzer was the moment that introduced Sophie Pecora to millions of people. But the years after AGT are what reveal who she actually became. And in 2026, her story isn't finished. It's still being written.